The second talk.
We're rolling.
Okay. This is the second talk on the OpenWetWare's Open Science Seminar Series. The first talk is online by John Wilbanks at openwetware.org. And if you don't know about the site, it's a wiki serving the biology and biological engineering community dedicated to sharing information amongst researchers. And we're really excited to have Chris Surridge here. Chris Surridge is coming to us from London. And Cambridge, sorry. So Chris did a PhD and his postdoctoral work at Imperial College when he moved to Nature Structural Biology for a couple years, and then went to the editorial board of Nature. He spent 10 years there, and around 2005 was in talks with the Public Library of Science, or PLoS, and to start a new type of journal, which Chris will tell us about, and we're really excited to have him here. Chris?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really scared to be here since the last person who talked in this series was John Wilbanks, who is stunningly good at presenting, and about the best person for using things like PowerPoint and just generally talking that there is. And the talk's going to be up on the web, and I'm going to come nowhere close to how polished he is at giving a talk. What I tend to do is I ramble and drift off the point. So the moment I start doing that, you guys are going to have to tell me so I can drag myself back to wherever it was I thought I was talking about. So just dive in. There will be time for questions afterwards, but if there are questions or if there's things that I'm saying that make no sense while I'm saying them, please don't hesitate. Come, stand up, shout. Don't walk out, but ask me. So right, yeah, let's see what we're going to talk about. PLoS ONE, Open Access 2.0. Open Access 2.0 is a bit of a buzzword that we've put together, and why I'm talking about it as a 2.0 is we were fitting in with the idea of Web 2.0. And the way I look at Web 2.0, everyone has a different view of what Web 2.0 is, apart from the fact that it's clearly trendy, is that it's what happens with Web 2.0 happens because the blur exists. The division between the person that makes the content and the person that reads the content is completely broken down. And that in the Web 2.0 applications, I mean Flickr, MySpace, things like that, Wikipedia, the two communities are the same, and this is what happens. Now, science is a great place to do this kind of stuff because, well, if you're in science publishing, the guys that edit it, mainly, the guys that produce the work, the researchers, the guys that read the work, the readers, they're all the same person. So in some ways you could say science has been 2.0 for ages. The problem is that has not been captured within the web, and one of the reasons why PLoS started talking about this idea of this journal was to try and capture that synergy, the way that everyone works together to forward science. But I'm now way ahead of what I wanted to be talking about. So let's. I was just going to mention who I am, why I can justify standing up here and talking to you. As Sri has already done, I said I was an undergraduate at Leeds. I was a postgrad. I was a postdoc. So I am the archetypal scientist. I ran along that way. And then I was, what did I do? Oh, I'm proving, just to prove that I was a scientist. I did publish a paper once. Please don't go and look it up. No one else has. And then in about 1995, for a variety of reasons, most of them to do with the fact that my grant money was running out, I applied for a job at Nature Structural Biology, though I didn't know it was that at the time, and I moved from the doer to the gatekeeper. I don't know what you want to call a scientific editor. But I had great fun at Nature Publishing Group, being deputy editor, assistant editor at Nature Structural Biology, and then doing all sorts of things at Nature. I really did do quite a lot of things within the editorial office of Nature. I ended up looking after things like computational biology and plant biology and systems biology and things like that. And last year, the guys at PLoS, we had this idea of putting together a different sort of journal. So, the Public Library of Science. Am I going to have to explain to you guys what the Public Library of Science is? Probably not. but we'll give it a go anyway. Actually, let me do this. Let's do a bit of audience participation already. Hands up everyone who has read a paper, scientific paper. That's good. Hands up everyone who knows that they've read a paper in a PLoS journal. How many people have authored a paper in a PLoS journal? Ooh, yeah, soon. Yeah, you count. You've got your accept date. So, yeah, that's a shame. Never mind. But anyway, this is one of the problems. We can't publish enough papers. This is what PLoS is not about.
It's the Onion Radio News. This is Joanne Brennan reporting. A group of scientists at the Harvard University Medical School announced today that they have made stunning advancements in heart disease prevention, but added that they are keeping it all for themselves. Responding to intense public outcry, head researcher Dr. Carl Trotter says people in the medical community should have been a lot nicer to the scientists who made the important discoveries. It's our research. We can do anything we want with it. Dr. Trotter says he will give people a sneak peek at the findings, but only for $100 billion. For the Onion Radio.
So yeah, The Onion is good satire. Satire is only funny because it's almost true. So, Public Library of Science, we're about, what are we about? Anyone? Open access publishing, okay. You're not a good audience. You've got to come back. So we do open access publishing. And open access publishing is slightly different from what many of the other journals, the sort of traditional journals do. And let's see, who thinks they know what open access publishing is? Good. That's not too bad. I'll explain it anyway, because not everyone in the room does. And there are various myths about open access publishing. Oh, I'm missing slides already. Public Library of Science, this is what we do. We are committed to making the world's scientific and medical literature a public resource. Mission statements are good. I like mission statements. But anyway, what is open access publishing? What open access publishing is that what we publish, what Public Library of Science publishes, all of our material, is free to read. Free to read, well, freely accessible to anyone with an internet connection, which I know is not everybody. But anyone who's got access to the internet can read everything that we publish. Second thing is that, and this is almost as important as the first thing. First thing is just free access. Second thing is that what we publish is under a license, is under copyright, which allows for its unrestricted distribution and reuse, as long as the original source is cited. And this is probably the most different thing about open access, not the money, but the fact that the material can be reused. And no one's really, we're not really getting to grips with people realizing that yet. On a weekly basis, the guys in the PLoS office, in PLoS Biology, PLoS Medicine, those journals, they get requests coming in from authors saying, please can I have permission to reproduce my figure in a review? And you go, why did you publish? Did you not know what we were saying? What we're saying is, you get to be able to republish your figure in anywhere you want. And what's more, anyone else can as long as they cite you. Reuse. That's just figures. Reuse in data is important. We want to try and facilitate that. Open access, the other things, what's this? Author retain the rights, well, that's part of the same thing. And papers are deposited, yeah, they're archived. But the important thing is, it's free to use, free to read, free to reuse. And that's it. That's open access. What open access is not, open access is not a business model. Open access does not mean that authors have to pay. With PLoS, it kind of normally does mean that we ask authors to pay, but that's our business model of PLoS. That's not to do with open access. Many open access journals out there, authors are not charged publication fees. Open access has got nothing to do with the business model. Open access is not a scheme of peer review. It's got nothing, we said nothing about peer review up there. Peer review is a way of determining how good a paper, well, whether a paper should be published. Some open access journals Most open access journals run exactly the same sort of peer review as closed access journals. I don't think closed access is quite the right word, but it's a word. So open access has got nothing to do with peer review. Don't let anyone tell you it has. Open access is not free access. Free access means that you get to read it for free. Open access is more than that. Open access is you get to reuse it any way you want as long as you cite who produced the data, who produced the material, who the original source is. And I'm taking too long. This is Public Library of Science. We've published a few journals. Public Library of Science was originally set up as a pressure group in, when was it, 2000, about that, by Pat Brown, Harold Varmus, Mike Eyes, and some other guys, who were trying to convince the traditional publishers to move to an open access environment, to open access publishing, because they thought that the reuse and the ability to be read free was good for science, was good for advancing scientific advance, driving it forward, discovery. And they put together a petition of, I forget how many, very, very many scientists who were trying to convince the traditional publishers to go this route, or at least not even go that far. They just wanted free access to material 6 months after publication. But that, you know, there were a lot of people signed the petition, but that didn't actually get us very far. And it was realized that we really needed to start producing some journals ourselves, plus needed to produce some journals to prove that open access was a way of publishing, to show people what it was like. And that's why we started PLoS Biology and PLoS Medicine as a demonstration that you can produce a really high quality journal. And those are really high quality journals. However you want to define quality. I don't like quality. I'll tell you later why quality is one of those words that makes me itch. But they're top tier. Top tier, tier is another word, never mind. And we also produced, back in 2005, just about as I was joining PLoS, we launched 3 community journals, which are sort of similar in the way they work to journals that would be produced by a society. So they're run by an editorial board. PLoS Medicine and PLoS Biology have professional editors, just like Cell and Nature and Science. Community journals are run by an academic editorial board in much the same way as a society journal might be, because we needed to demonstrate to the society journals that open access was a viable option for their journals, and hopefully then convince them to change to open access. We've also brought out PLoS Clinical Trials in 2006, which is somewhat similar. I'm not going to talk about that today. But that's what we currently publish. That's what PLoS, Public Library of Science, currently publishes. I'm sounding horribly evangelical, so let's move away from this. But let's move back. We'll move back to the concept of, before I can explain about what PLoS ONE is and how that is a different kind of journal. I think we need to explore what a journal is and why journals exist. And well, simple answer, journals exist to publish papers. Anyone can disagree with that? Oh, that's good. You're not inspirational, never mind. So why publish? You guys are researchers. You write papers. Does anyone not write papers in this room? Nah, okay, good. You write papers to publish. Why do you publish them? Anyone?
Dissemination of information.
Dissemination of information. You want to tell people what you do, don't you? If you didn't want to tell people what you did, why were you doing what you did? Disseminate it. Yeah, anything else?
Career advancement.
Career advancement. You need, and what do you want when you publish to achieve that?
You want to publish in a high-impact journal that is read by a large community of other scientists.
So you need to be read by so you need it to get to people who are going to be interested in it. You need to get that distribution. Same thing, really. You need to get it to other people who will justify it. You talked about the status of the journal. So you want it to be in a high-impact journal so that it appears that your work is also high impact, whether it is or not. But as long as its neighbors are high impact, you're happy. Validation. Validation. So you want by publishing it, you know that somebody out there has stamped on it and said, this guy did something that was fairly worthwhile. Yeah? Validation. Anything else?
Archival.
Archival. You want it to be preserved for all time because we want that sort of thing. How's that? Anything else? Anyone else got any other reasons for publishing apart from ego and career advancement, which seems to be about what it is?
Well, it's the process of like summarizing one's work in a final form that you can come back to at a later point in time.
Mm-hmm. So you want to have a canonical thing. You want to say, you want to put a mark in the sand. Yeah.
Not for your definition of open access, but peer review is a key part of typical scholarly journals.
Yep.
And the feedback you get from referees is enormously valuable
Yes.
to authors.
So you want to put it out there. So you want to put it out there so your peers, which are the people you respect, the people who are doing the same sort of things that you do, the people that are going to be interested in what you do, can give you feedback and say, hey, this was good, this was bad, I did something similar here, I never quite got those experiments to work, what was your trick? That kind of stuff, yeah?
Yeah.
And that works quite well with peer review.
Say it again?
That works quite well with peer review at the moment, yeah? You'd find it, apart from the fact that you actually don't know who they are, so it's difficult to have a conversation with them afterwards. But the interaction isn't quite there. But that's something you want to do.
Persuasion or influencing policymaking.
Policymaking, persuasion, get it out there. Forget talking amongst yourselves. Let's get it to the senator, I don't know, whoever makes policy.
Publishing does create a conversation, a slowly evolving one, but I mean, papers refer to other papers, and you basically try to kind of update the knowledge in a particular area.
So it kind of puts what you're doing, you're no longer working in that little box all by yourself. You put yourself in the context of a greater world movement for advancement. Wow, that sounds good.
How about money?
Money. Well, money comes with career. Yeah, money for paying. No one. Funding follows. Funding, career. Yeah. If you don't publish, no one knows that you're worth anything, and therefore they don't give you your next grant check. Yeah, that's pretty much. Okay. I haven't actually got a list here. I was just seeing what you guys said. A lot of it comes down to what you guys are doing. What scientists do is they create information. You find things out. You put them into a context. You create information. And somebody once said that the most valuable commodity I know of is information. And that's true. Commodities have no value at all unless they're moved around. They are, a bar of gold sitting in Fort Knox has no value at all. It's only when you move it that it does anything. It's only when you share it with other people. Share it. Move it to someone else. Share it around. If anyone can remember who said that, they can have a beer from me later. So, in the context, dissemination of information was one of those things that you said that was important, was why you publish. Journals have always been a mechanism for dissemination. And so we can think about what's the role of a scientific journal. I'm not going to go through the business of asking you guys this time, because this time I want to have a specific answer. And anyway, I can't continue if I don't get the right answer. Luckily, quite a long time ago, the role of a scientific journal was defined really quite well by my old employers. So, it's the first, to place before the general public the grand results of scientific work and scientific discovery, and to urge the claims of science to a more general recognition in education and daily life. I think we can agree with that one. Secondly, to aid scientific men, important words, aid scientific men themselves by giving early information, that's speed of publication, hey. So that's helping the scientists, speed of publication, of all advances made in any branch of natural knowledge throughout the world, and by affording them throughout the world, every branch of natural knowledge, affording them an opportunity of discussing the various scientific questions which arise from time to time. This is what Nature said that its job was in 1869, which was its first issue. Nature is not the oldest scientific journal in the world. There are a couple that are considerably older. But that was a good encapsulation. The Victorians were very good at encapsulating things in good mission statements. I prefer this mission statement to PLoS's, but don't tell anyone. So in amongst there, I'm not going to dissect them out because I'm not that clever at using PowerPoint. we talked about distribution, role of of a scientific journal. We talked about verification. It didn't actually say it on the mission statement of Nature, but verification, saying that something is worth having been done. This was worth doing. It's worth doing, it was worth reading. Statusing, I have no idea how to spell statusing, and neither does anything created by Microsoft. They really don't know how many S's they're supposed to be in there, and I'm not sure myself. But statusing, giving it a status, saying this is an A+ piece of work. This is a D-. This is a, well, you know, you scraped through, but as long as you never work in science again, you'll be all right. We'll let it up. No. Discussion. Nature said it was Nature's point of view was to aid discussion. Science, his point of view was to aid to discussion. Aiding discussion by disseminating work, getting people to talk. But discussion is a two-way street. Two-way street. There is the person who's talking, there's the person who's listening and replying. And journals like Science and Nature and most journals have always had the opportunity to write in letters, to comment on other people's work, and that was supposed to facilitate discussion. And I'm going to go on to suggest that process, while laudable and worked really nicely until about, let's see, 1992, can be done so much better these days because of a small invention that was thought up by somebody who doesn't work a million miles away from this building. So, PLoS ONE. When we thought about our stuff, the journals we produced, we about 18 months ago, maybe longer. I wasn't there, so I can't be sure exactly when this idea started percolating around and this problem was seen. We realized that although we were doing quite well, we've got some great journals. PLoS had been great journals. PLoS was not entirely happy with the speed with which open access was being adopted within the scientific publishing community. And you need to remember about PLoS, well, you don't need to remember about PLoS, it just produces journals if you like. But the point of PLoS is not to publish journals. The point of PLoS is to make as much of the scientific literature open access as possible, whether we publish it or someone else does. Anyway, we weren't entirely happy about the speed of things were going along. And we also weren't entirely happy with the fact that we were getting lots and lots of submissions for people who were clearly, quite often, people who were submitting to PLoS. They didn't actually remember whether it was PLoS Biology or PLoS Medicine they were submitting to. They wanted to be published by PLoS. And we didn't have the access for them. These were possibly perfectly good papers. And we could see that there was a desire out there to get more papers into the open access literature than existed. And so we sat back, they sat back, and thought, well, let's forget the past 300 years of scientific journals, because there is a small thing these days that is different, but possibly as radical as the printing press. Does anyone need me to fill that in? It's 3 letters. Middle one's E. So we have a different way of disseminating things these days. And it's a really good way of disseminating information because everyone in the world I can get a message that is potential to be read by everyone in the world, and I could write it now and put it up, and anybody could read it in seconds flat. That's a lot better than putting it on a printing press and pushing it around by post. But anyway, we thought, let's look at this. We've got the web now. What things can you do on the web? If I was creating a journal, if I was creating not even a journal, a way of disseminating scientific information, how would I do it now? And we thought, and you think about some of the things that you want from a journal. And you think, okay, so well, I've already talked about the dissemination, I'm going to do it on the web. And, well, I guess I don't really need a hard copy then. And, well, if I don't need a hard copy, how many papers am I going to publish a month? Well, I suppose if I haven't got a hard copy, there's nothing to stop me publishing as many as the hell I like. That's the thought. So if I've got the web and I can publish as many papers as the hell I like, I don't need to worry, I might not have to worry about of selecting from the papers that are submitted to me, the 10%, say, that are the best by some criteria that I'm not quite sure I could define very well. So, okay, so I've got a dissemination system that allows me to publish as much as I like. So what do I actually want to publish? Well, I want to publish science. Okay, I want to publish science. Do I want to publish biology? Yeah, I probably want to publish some biology. Do I want to publish medicine? Well, I probably want to publish medicine. I'm doing it already. Do I want to publish astrophysics? Well, let's leave that to one side a minute, astrophysics. Let's do something a little easier. Do I want to publish chemistry? And you go, well, so what sort of chemistry? Well, you know, I suppose chemistry, some of the time chemistry looks awfully like biochemistry. So where is the difference between biochemistry and chemistry? Can anyone do me a good definition between the difference between biochemistry and chemistry? No, we couldn't find it very easily, and there was always something in the grey area. So, okay, right, fine. So if we're publishing biology, we can't quite tell the difference between biology and chemistry. We can tell sometimes when things are chemistry, and we can tell when things are biology, but we can't. There's that grey area in the middle. So, right, let's forget about that. Let's move that on and say, okay, we'll cover chemistry because we can't quite see where the border is. And oh, wait a minute. If I can't, where does chemistry fall into physics again? Oh, right. Okay, well, we better publish chemistry. You quickly discovered that you quickly discover if you try and classify things, that classifying things is very difficult. And generally, if you classify papers, they don't fit in the holes that you want to put them in, and they want to fit in other holes. So we thought, oh, obviously, one of the things we want to do with a new journal, which we're going to call PLoS ONE because, well, it seems a good enough name. Freedom of use, obviously, the thing down the bottom, obviously we're going to do that. We're open access publishers. But let's have an inclusive scoop. Let's not worry too much about what we call science, because we know what science is, we think, as long as I don't have to worry about social sciences too much, which I haven't had to yet, but I'm going to have to at some point. Let's try and see if we can develop a way to publish the whole of science. Now, what problem does that cause? Well, it causes me the problem that I've got and the reason it means I have a huge number of things I could be publishing. Now, is that a problem? Well, let me see. I'm publishing on the web, and the web has got lots of documents on it at the moment, and some guys have actually worked out clever things like search engines for defining which ones to look at. So if I had a good search engine, perhaps I wouldn't need to have to classify, and people could just look for what they wanted. Well, wait a minute. I think there are things called Medline. I must have heard that somewhere. We claimed, I'm being facetious and moving off the point, but you look at it, the way you guys deal with the scientific literature right now, you do not, I defy you, well, you probably do, but you do not take a journal and look at its table of contents in general. There are maybe a handful of journals that you might do that to. What you do if you want to find something specifically for your work is you go to Medline, probably. Most people biological scientists? Yeah, probably. There's, physics must have its similarities, similar ones. There are other ways. But you go to Medline, or you go to Google Scholar, and you type in your search tool, and you get the papers. And they're the papers that you looked for, depending on what search term you are. And you go to the papers straight off. And it's only after you've got to the paper and maybe read the abstract even that you finally twig actually what journal you're reading it in, if you've ever heard of the journal, if you care what the journal is. So it's almost already, we don't care a huge amount for most of the literature what paper what journal a paper is published in terms of finding it. For instance, statusing it, that's another matter. But in terms of finding it, we don't worry about journals. Because that is not how subject areas look. All those little blobs can sit, nice circles of subject areas. That's not how science is. Science is like that. That wasn't a very good diagram. Oh well, never mind. It's a Venn diagram. Some papers, papers are in multiple subject areas. They overlap. It's messy. Much better to allow things to be, rather than to ghettoize them, to force things into a little box that is the journal's subject area range. Let's let it float free, and we could possibly then we provide a decent search engine, and you find what you need. It's what you do anyway. So why have a subject area for a journal anymore? So inclusive scope. That's what we thought. Objective peer review. Right. This is one of the key things about PLoS ONE that we came down to. We thought. Wow, we didn't think that far. But we looked at it, and because a number of the people that were talking to us about this were scientists themselves. Let's see. I'll do this head count again. Hands up, everyone who's published a paper. Hands up, everyone who has been published in the first journal that they submitted it to. Hands up, everyone who has never had a paper published in the second or third they had to has never had to pass a paper from one journal to another. Well done. Good lads. I'm impressed. It's hard, but or maybe you were aiming, you knew your stuff. Quite a lot of the time, it's hard work publishing papers. And often you have to move them around from one journal to another. And this is because people are saying, well, it's good, works solid, but it doesn't quite fit the criteria of this journal. Well, that's inclusive scope. It's not quite sufficient an advance over that paper that Joe Bloggs published back in July to be included in our journal. But I'm sure it would be suitable for some more specialist journal. This kind of thing. We thought, hang on a minute. What this decision is saying, making decisions like that is saying, well, we know it wants to be published somewhere because it's clearly, it's good enough science. We haven't got anything really technically wrong with it. It's just it's not necessarily exciting enough. It doesn't quite fit within the remit. Isn't the sort of thing that we intended to publish. Hang on. I'm publishing in a journal. I've got an infinite capacity on the web. Not quite infinite, but pretty close. If I've got an infinite capacity, why am I rejecting papers that are worth publishing? If they're worth publishing, they're good enough. They're just not good enough for me. What do I mean by good? How should I know? I've only got 3 referees have looked at it. 3 referees is, 3 referees is 3 referees, but 3 people don't always get things right. So we thought, well, no, let's cut to the chase. Is this paper, I get submitted a paper to PLoS ONE. The decision I want to make is, should this paper be published or should it not? That's surely the most important decision. And well, perhaps if it should be published, I've got an infinite capacity, I can publish it. That doesn't do anything about statusing, telling you how good a paper is, but maybe we can find out a way of dealing with that later. But certainly, I could publish everything, and it would help the author because they wouldn't have to hawk their paper around several other journals until they find one where it actually fits. We could shortcut this whole triple-down pyramid. Has anyone seen those diagrams of journal publishing with a few top-tier journals and lots of middle-tier journals and this morass of journals that I'm not sure what I will describe them as third-tier journals. Let's give that one. Perhaps we could shortcut that and just say, well, if it's worth publishing, we'll publish it. Because, well, we can publish as much as we like in some ways. So we thought about this, and that's what we thought might be a good idea, and people might like that. So we thought of having an objective peer review, and objective meaning not subjective. Oh, sorry. So if it can be published, it can be published. Seems sensible. What else could we do? Yeah, that doesn't get away. That feels slightly wrong. But also, it feels like, what was it we had? What was back on that mission statement of Nature's? Something about discussing. That was it. Discussion. The web is stunningly good at interactions. All you have to do is look at Flickr. You look at Amazon. You look at any blog you care to, well, not any blog, but most of the blogs you care to mention. You have this wonderful way that other people reading, can contribute, can discuss, can add comments. It's been going on. It's been going on before the web was invented. You know, there were discussion threads and listservs around since well, I don't know, at least since the early 80s. I think probably in the 70s, where they had the ability to you know, a group of people to discuss something online. And science is all about discussion, isn't it? I mean, isn't the places that science is advanced, the places where you guys probably have the most fun, in science, I mean, actually probably both, places you have the most fun is when you're standing in front of a poster, or you're sitting around in the coffee room and you're just fapping with the other people in your lab, or the other people who are there, or you're finding out about a scientist's work, not reading the paper, discussing the paper. That's the fun bit, isn't it? So, the web can do this. So why don't we have discussions? Why don't we have really good, intimately involved discussions in the papers? And if we do that, you then have the ability of providing, you know, perhaps then not just 3 people will decide how good a paper is. Perhaps everyone could decide how good a paper is. Perhaps people will have different opinions about how good the paper is. So we thought we'd do that. Why did I put that up? I put that up to demonstrate. I put it up because it's time I had a joke. I put it up to show that that's a pretty good description of how things go on in science, I'm sorry to say. But what it is it shows, what does it show? It shows the interactivity. It shows that it's a recursive state. It shows that you go back and you know, what you thought a paper, what you thought you were doing when you started might not have been what you were doing by the end. And however you write the paper, you know, linear flow of paper, no way. It's a good joke though. So discussion, ooh, I'm not going to there yet. So what if you could incorporate discussions in the paper? So we thought, this is what we want to do. This is what we want to do with PLoS ONE. What we want to do with PLoS ONE is make it hassle-free to publish, because a lot of the time it's a hassle to publish, and yet we want to keep that justification. What was the word that someone over there used? Verification. We want to have papers verified. We don't want to be a preprint server. Well, okay, no, we don't want to be a preprint server. Physicists seem to work nicely with preprint servers. Don't really think there's any biologists who really would be happy with a preprint server method of publication. Don't want to do that. So we want to verify it. So we'll have a peer review. We'll have a method of saying this work is all right. This work is fine. This is well done science. The data is good enough to hang conclusions from. This is stuff that should be published. This is work that is of a quality that means that it should be published. It's worth believing in. That's what we're really saying by verification. Validation, that was the word. I knew it began with a V. Validation. The work is good. Good, I can hang the conclusions off it. So we do that. And we can have it across the entirety of science, because then everyone can easily find it. We might be able to increase synergies between it. And we're not going to be bothering trying to work out, should this paper be published? Is it entirely within the remit of the journal? No, sod that. It's a problem that you don't have to worry about because you're publishing on the web. So, yeah, and but then you've got rid of one of the things that was good about peer review. One of the things that was good about peer review was you get the feedback. You get a discussion. You get other people talk about it. And if I'm doing an objective peer review, I'm going to lose some of that. And we don't want to lose that, because that kind of discussion, that kind of feedback, the fact that people are talking, that is one of the important things. Jeez, is it that late? Is one of the important things. So let's have the discussion. And the web can do discussion. Web does discussion like nobody else. So I'm not going to go. So let's have let's have the ability to have comments put into papers. Let's have the ability to read comments. Where are we? Let's have discussion threads. These are mock-ups. They aren't designed. They're something called wireframes. Let's have discussion threads around a paper. Up here, let's find a cursor. Up here, there's a paper. Oh, I've highlighted a piece of text that someone was interested in talking about. Yeah, here's some comments, here's some more comments, here's yet more comments about the comments. The paper becomes an interactive discussion, a conversation. And that's what science is. Science is discussing. It's not just the experiments. The experiments are just the raw material. It's the discussion. It's the ideas. It's the concepts. It's the hypotheses. It's what goes on in the scientist's head. It's not what happens on the lab bench. That's just the raw material. Personalized content. Well, yeah, obviously. Geez, if I've got that big, if I'm talking about something that's publishing, I'm seriously talking about something that is publishing hundreds of papers a month. If I'm talking about that size, no one's going to read it. No one. Who looks at the PNAS table of contents? Who looks at all of the PNAS table of contents? Fun? Yeah. No, you don't want that. You guys only subscribe to 2, maybe 3 table of contents alerts, because although you don't just read papers from 2 or 3 journals, the other journals have got so much padding, meaning stuff that I am not interested in, that you don't want to wade through it. You'll find it with the search engine. But everyone's search terms are different. Well, let's incorporate that. Hey, I remember Google have this thing, personalized homepage, and so do Yahoo. Perhaps we can use that to mean that when I come to PLoS ONE to have a look at things, I get what I'm going to want to look at. Personalized content. For no apparent reason, I did that. You really don't need to see that. And that's got no relevance, really. It was a longer talk. To personalize content so that you get what you are interested in. And everybody who comes to PLoS ONE, as long as they've registered, they've told us a little bit about what they're interested in, gets what they're interested in, and it becomes their journal. It's fine. You could do it with Google. Google does it. Google News does it. You know, anybody can do it. It's Web 2.0. That functionality, and it's useful to you. You can make your own table of contents. Finally, oh yeah, speed's quite important. Scientists tend to say that speed is kind of important when they're publishing, you know, especially as actually it's a dog-eat-dog world out there and your competitors will try and get their papers published before you because precedent is important. So, you know, it's probably a good idea if you did things quickly. And one of the things that we can do with PLoS ONE is, well, one of the things we have done with PLoS ONE is we've streamlined the production process. Chiefly because the standard traditional production schemes in general tend to cap you at publishing a certain number of papers a month. It's the way it is. That's their capacity. If you want something scalable, if you want to do something publishing hundreds of papers a month, you have to streamline it. So we did that, which is quite fun. Means that we can publish, means that once we're alive, once this journal is published, and I should say that the first papers in PLoS ONE will be published before the end of this year. They should be published on the 29th of November, but don't quote me on that because it's not quite certain yet. Probably the first week in December. After that, those papers, some of those have been waiting a while. After that, every paper is going to be published within about 3 weeks of it being accepted. And that's in proper form, XML, PDF'd. Anyway, so that's kind of where we are. That's what we're going to have. PLoS ONE, we think there is a desire to have an inclusive journal. So I'm not going to reject you because you don't fall within the remit, because my remit is huge. An objective peer review. I'm not going to reject you because you're not quite as interesting as that paper that was last July, even if you're better quality data, even if you're a negative result, even if you're confirmatory in a different system of a result that we're fairly sure about, but it's really nice to have that confirmation. But, well, it's only a confirmation, so off to the specialist literature you go. No. And then you personalize it and you do all the Web 2.0 and you have the discussion, and the discussion is what science is, as I say. That's where I see it anyway. This is sounding horribly evangelical, I'm sorry. I'm even using my hands like one. And once you've got that, what other things could you do? Here's some ideas. Oh yeah, why don't I have, well, I suppose I can have comments on a paper that I can keep to myself. That seems sensible. I do that all the time. It's called yellow sticky pads all over my PDF printouts. And I have comments that I can share with the entire world, but I don't want necessarily, sometimes I just like to talk to my lab. Sometimes I just like to talk to my group of friends. Let's have groups. Let's have shared comments that happen within a group. Yeah, that'll do. What else can we do? Oh yeah, well, you know, why should it apply just to PLoS ONE? Why can't it apply to all PLoS journals? No particularly good reason. Let's put some tools out there. Why can't it apply to everything that I can get hold of? If it's open access, I can reuse it. That was one of the points. Okay, well, let's apply the tools to everything from open access. Might even go further than that if I can get hold of things like abstracts. Behavior-based discovery. Wow, what was I on that day? What I mean here is, this is Amazon. When you're on Amazon, you're looking at a book. And down that left-hand side, what does it say? It says, other people who have read this book, who bought this book, also looked at blah. Let's make that into a science. Other people who have read this paper also read these papers. You might be interested in them. That's that sort of thing. We can be a lot more subtle than that. Well, we can't at the moment, but we will be able to be a lot more subtle with that when you have people using, we see what people read. If I know what you read, I can predict what you will want to read. I will be able to tell you when there is a paper that you will want to read comes up, and I'll send you that email and say, hey, from what you've read before, I know you're going to love this. Not sure whether my marketing department will approve of that exact words, by the way, so, you know, don't quote me. Yeah, what else can we do? Oh, wikis. I love wikis. They're great fun. They're no good for doing scientific papers because, well, authors need to know who wrote, you need to know who the author was, and you need to keep that because for your career advancement, you have to know about the paper. It has to have been yours. It's no use if someone else in Minnesota or somewhere has revised the whole damn thing. So none of it's yours anymore. No, but if you're dealing with reviews, that might be a cunning way to use a wiki. Hey, let's everyone to get together and write a review on apoptosis. Wikipedia is really good. Wikipedia works really well. Perhaps we can use the same thing for reviews. These are just ideas. We can use it for text mining. You know, text mining. Let's push it through one of those clever guys in computers who've done text mining projects and see what comes out at the other end. See if we can have a version which is tagged up with links to, I don't know, all the Drosophila genes. It'd be quite nice to do that in the main paper, but it's going to be a hell of a lot easier keeping that away from the authors, leaving the author's version as a canonical version. So everyone knows what the author wrote, but hey, look what I've done with it. What else we got? Portals, the journal of the future. Oh yeah, I remember what I was on when I wrote this. What does a journal editor do? Journal editor journal editor goes out into the world and finds papers, jewels, pieces of work that he believes, or she believes, she frequently, more frequently than he, that they believe the readers of their journal want to read. Okay, that seems like a fair job description. If I've got all this corpus, this large amount of open access material, perhaps I can do the same. Perhaps I don't actually have to go out into the world. Perhaps all I need to do is well, someone else has done all that reviewing and peer review and stuff beforehand, and has helped me. And here is my my crude oil, my raw materials to make a journal. It's open access. Oh yeah, it's open access, which means I can reuse it, doesn't it? Oh yeah. I think these papers are what my constituency want to read. Let's pull those in. I'll make those my the table of contents for this, and well, I can surround it with other material like, well, mini reviews, and I could put the job ads along the side, and take some ads from Google AdSense, and maybe have a commentary or two, and I'll write an editorial because, well, I have an ego. Let's face it, and suddenly you have this idea of a portal which isn't a journal as such, because it doesn't actually have to worry about the, submissions can come through it. But you've created a journal. You've created a collection of papers that a particular constituency wants to read, which is pretty much what a journal is. You've surrounded it by secondary material, which is kind of what you want to do with a journal. It's a thought. PLoS ONE kudos. This is not a new perfume. This is the idea that people who are using PLoS ONE and commenting, they can gain status. People can say, hey, that was a really good comment that guy made. That was really insightful. Oh, I'll give him some ranking on that. You find out who's good at doing things. Feedback. Going really fast this. PLoS Zero. PLoS Zero. That's a good idea. Nature had a trial. I'm not supposed to work orc over there, sorry. Nature did a trial this summer of an open peer review system. What they did was they kind of went a bit like a preprint server, kind of open peer review. What they did was they put papers up that they were considering publishing, and they allowed people to come in and comment on them. So that not only the 3 reviewers that they had conscripted, well, whatever it is, recruited, that's the word, recruited into looking at the paper, were advising them, but anybody else could come in and make comments and say who they were and put into place. And so they would have a much broader base of information on which to make a final publishing decision. Well, I suppose we could do that, couldn't we? Yeah, that's similar to a preprint server. Perhaps we could do open peer review before publication. Yeah, that might work. Faculty of 1, I have no idea what that means. PLoS ONE, I don't know if I've convinced you of anything at all, but PLoS ONE is going to happen. I know it's going to happen because I know how the papers are. I even have a PLoS ONE author in the room today. I think that we can use, the important thing, I don't know whether PLoS ONE is the best way to publish the things in the future. I'm convinced that it's not the only way. But what I am completely convinced of is that we should be using the things that the web can do much, 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 much more cleverly and subtly to help the discussion and the advancement of science. PLoS ONE's a stab at that. We've probably got things wrong, but we're giving it a try because journals were invented for the printing press. The standard journal was invented for the printing press, effectively. It was refined in the 1950s when peer review was effectively invented, sort of. Certainly in its form that it's used now. And things have changed. The web changes a lot of things, and we can do a lot of things differently. And PLoS ONE is an attempt at that. And as I say, it will be publishing very, very soon. And we're accepting papers right now. And I've already talked at least 10 minutes longer than I was supposed to. So I'm just going to shut up. You can ask me questions. Yeah.
So, is this going to be at all like traditional journals where you have an editorial board to do the peer review to determine if papers are going to be published, or is it going to be a little more open? And if it is going to be more open, then how are you going to authenticate users to make sure that you're actually having scientists review the papers and not some random person in Singapore?
Okay. Yeah, that's 2 good questions. The first one is, are we going to have an editorial board? Yeah, there's 188 of them at the moment and still growing. Submit your applications to be a PLoS ONE editorial board member to me. That's not quite true. Yeah, we have an editorial board. What happens, the way that peer review works before papers get published is the paper gets submitted. The paper then finds its way to an academic editor who seems appropriate for handling the subject area of the paper that's come in. And that academic editor makes the decision on publication. That academic editor might be able to make the decision on publication based on their own knowledge and information. If he's the other expert in the field, well, then he probably can make that decision. Or they may need to discuss it with other people on the editorial board. Or they may need to send it out to referees. And they might need 1 referee, they might need 3 referees. But that pre-publication review is not at all dissimilar to the standard journals. The difference is the question that is being asked. The question is being asked, should this paper be published? Not, should this be published in this journal? The second bit was about who gets to play. Well, everyone gets to play as long as you tell us who you are. And there's sort of two levels to that. One is that we aren't intending to restrict access to PLoS ONE to anybody. I mean, we have open access. That's not what we do. But we do need to know who you are. If you're going to make comments on papers, we need to know who you are. We don't need to know that you're a scientist because, well, scientist is a state of mind. But we do need to know who you are, and we do need you to identify yourself on the site because we think that that is the best way to maintain civil obedience. Well, general pleasant discussion rather than any nastier. And yeah, we'll moderate the comments. And if someone starts saying things that are inflammatory or just not what we want to see within a scientific discussion, then we'll think about taking those comments down, or even blocking that user, or even banning that user to do anything but read. So we're not going to ensure that only scientists make comments, but we are going to make sure that you know what sort of person was making the comments, and hopefully even exactly which person was making the comments. Can I take it? Yeah, you can do a follow-up.
How are you going to verify that the identity of the person, and are you going to assign any sort of status to people who are, or credibility or something to people who are more, yeah, I was going to say more
How elite is
authorized to talk about the subject.
What we're going to do is we're going to collect. Before you can become a user on PLoS ONE, we're going to collect quite a lot of information about you. Sort of name, working email address, address of where you either work or, an amount of information. It's almost impossible, of course, to verify automatically that someone is telling the truth about who they are in that respect. A working email address is you can check for. Very little else you can check for unless you're going to restrict things like whitelists, only using people from MIT, stuff like that. But we're going to have enough information that we can that if you start misbehaving, we can work out who you are, and that would have to be a human process. Sorting out the comments, keeping it civilized, is going to have to be done by PLoS staff. People are going to have to moderate this stuff, and a lot of it's going to be done by us.
I guess so. The model of cute usernames and fake identities and all those things, provided there's a working email address, none of that really. It would seem to me that for what you're doing, a real identity is pretty important.
Yeah, and we want to have a real identity. What I'm saying is that it is difficult to check for that automatically. But you can check these things. If I've got an address, a proper address, on file. If I have, did I ask for telephone numbers? Probably not. It's a bit much. If I have these things on file, if someone says this guy does not exist, so if someone flags up to me and says I'm really worried about this user, I don't think they're real, then I have information with which I can try and determine if that person is real. So it's a case of, it's an impossible, in some ways it's an impossible thing to do, as you say. But what we can do is we can insist that you have your real identity, and we can try and provide ourselves with enough information that we can identify if you are not, and then do something about it. Can't be done up front, sadly. But yes, real identity is important.
Credit cards.
Sorry?
Credit cards would do a better job.
In America, wasn't other parts of the world?
Yeah, we do work well with Creative Commons. We're working with Creative Commons, and we'll do everything we can. But you're right. Sometimes we can't do everything. Yeah.
So you emphasized that the business model was not part of open access.
Yes.
But PLoS sounds like a substantial enterprise, and it must have a business model.
We have a business model.
Where are you
yes.
getting the funding for this?
The funding for PLoS ONE? Hopefully PLoS ONE needs some funding to set itself up, but only the funding within PLoS itself. We are going to be charging, in the way that all the PLoS journals do, we're going to be asking an author fee for publication. We've tried to keep it as low as we possibly can for PLoS ONE because we want to publish volume. We don't want to restrict access for anyone. So this PLoS ONE is going to be funded by author fees.
Do you have a vision of what the steady state would be after the kind of lawsuit were to get going?
In what do you mean steady state?
What do you think is the steady state fee that an author will have to pay?
Steady state fee?
Yeah.
I don't know because I don't know what the steady state number of papers published is.
Well, suppose we take the hundreds a month that you were describing, say 200 a month. Could you estimate?
Well, I suppose the answer is, the question is, what are we setting the fee at right now?
Yeah.
What we're setting the fee at right now is $12.50 dollars. Yeah, that's $1,250. Not $12.50. Sadly. And what we know, I mean, one of the things, PLoS is a registered charity, so we're not allowed to make too much money. We're not allowed to make money. So we'll try and keep that down. That seems realistic to us at the moment. That seems to be something enough money that we would quite happily, if we're publishing up to, you know, a couple of hundred a month.
Are you getting any foundation money or planning to seek any?
Not for PLoS ONE as a whole. You know, there were certain parts of, there were certain things, there were some of the things I was talking about as the, what comes next. We will look for ways to fund it with foundation money for specific things. Let's face it, you know, we'll take money from wherever we can in some respects in order to run this. And we really want to keep the fees as low as possible for authors. But our break-even, our maintenance money, the thing to keep it running, we anticipate to come from author fees. Other bolt-ons, we might be able to get money from other people to finance them, certainly to finance the development of them. And that's how PLoS's business model has been since the beginning of time, really. Well,
so how big a professional staff do you envision, or is there now?
Envision.
Well,
try to keep it.
Yeah.
I want it to be a community. We're looking at PLoS ONE as being a community site. So we want as small a professional staff as absolutely possible. And we want it to being run by, as much as possible, by the editorial board. I can envisage the editorial board climbing to 1,000 people to get the coverage, and so that nobody on the editorial board is doing a lot of work. And we're envisaging that the community themselves, as much as possible, we want to give them the power to control PLoS ONE as much as possible. So as low as possible.
I'm just thinking about the maintenance work. You know, you got to pay for servers. You got to have people maintaining them. You have to do copy editing, even if it's streamlined.
Yeah.
There are costs that you do not expect a scientific professional editor to take on. Burdens.
Yes.
You don't expect.
Yeah.
So what I'm asking is how big a staff.
That's why you have to have a fee. That's why the fee isn't $50.
Right. So how big a staff for doing that maintenance activity do you have?
Well, at the moment, what do we have? Well, editorially, there's me, and we have a couple of sort of manuscript publications assistants that are helping moving the manuscripts through the system. And we have a plan by which, you know, depending on how many manuscripts we get submitted, we need this many publication assistants. We reckon, you know, every 100 papers a month, we need an extra person looking after the manuscript flow. For every 100 papers, we have every 50 papers, I think it is, I can't remember the systems, but something like that. For every 50 papers we accept a month, we need another production person. So we've tried to make all these things as scalable as possible. So when I know the volume, I'll tell you the staff. But people, the professional editor, basically, you know, the people like me who've been sort of doing triage in the first place on journals, things like that, I want to have none at all if I possibly can.
Say that again. You don't want to exist?
I don't want to exist. No, I don't want to exist.
So you envision 1,000 independent editors doing their own thing and adding papers to the repository?
Not entirely doing their own thing. I mean, when I say I want to get rid of me, I want there only to be one of me. I don't actually, you know. Actually, I'd rather it wasn't me by that point. But, you know, someone will need to oversee. But we really want the we want as few people overseeing as possible, and the editorial board doing as little work as possible, looking after only a couple of manuscripts a month at the absolute maximum, and therefore being able to be in charge of this.
Well, good luck.
Well, it's worth a shot. Yeah, let's go over there.
Design the discussion interface. Do you have any model in mind? Like, how do you decide what features to put in there?
Do we have a model in mind? No, I mean, one of the problems with PLoS ONE was that we looked around for a publication platform on which to produce this, and there wasn't one that was going to meet our needs. So an independent project got set up, not by, PLoS doesn't run this, but we work intimately with them, is a software development called Topaz, which is producing an open source, end-to-end publishing platform for open access publications. And they're working closely with the Fedora group for document. I've now run past my technical knowledge, but that's what's happening. So all that, I mean, those wireframes I showed you probably won't look like that at all. Those were 3 months back. So this whole thing is a new build. It is entirely the reason why I can't tell you whether we're launching on the 29th of November or not.
The community moderation. Yep. It seems like there's already a site that's dealt with that pretty extensively in Slashdot.
Yeah.
Have you considered that style of moderation at all?
We have, and we'd like to. We'd quite like to move to that sort of way. I mean, the fact is, to achieve that, you have to identify the super users. I can't remember what they call them on Flashdot, but you need to create, give people extra. That have a sort of a hierarchy of user type edit.
Moderators are generally assigned by just people who read more often.
Yeah, exactly. And we want to think about doing that, but we didn't want to just take the Slashdot model and say, let's do it that way. We're not entirely convinced that that's the best way. But we imagine that something similar like that will evolve for us, because that will be the best way. Because we don't want to be in control of this site particularly. This needs to be a community site. So yeah, we've looked a lot at Flashdot, but that's not something that we think it's better for us, at least in the initial stages, to be doing this by professional, by people in, and then we can be sure about it and roll it out as it carries on, as we begin to identify people who are good.
Just really quick, Chris, if people need to leave, feel free. We've kind of gone over time, but we have the room for a little bit more, so we'll just keep on going with the questions and answers.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. I talked longer than I kept talking. It's very unusual for me. I'm really very quiet. If you want, also, I brought some swag with me. There's some T-shirts over there, and tattoos, if you want to feel like you come down. Anyway, yes.
I guess 2 comments. One is that it seems like there's an opportunity here to do something which is very awkward to do in the published world, which is to revise papers. I'm wondering if you'd thought about making it a straightforward operation for authors to sort of roll in the set of comments and the new things that had happened since the paper was published, and do a new version of the paper, which perhaps got referenced or forward linked.
I would really like to do that. I mean, it's one of the things that was in the our original ideas for PLoS ONE, was the idea of being able to, on a relatively infrequent basis. I mean, this isn't, I wouldn't expect someone revising a paper in more frequently than 6 months, maybe. And I would dearly like to do that. And I've got I need in my to-do list. There is Chris to create a plan to achieve the ability of authors to put revised papers together within about 6 months. There's a whole lot of problems with versioning that come into it, and how people like Medline and ISI would cope with it. So there's a whole lot of organizational problems that we need to find solutions for that don't exist right now, and so we backburned it for a few months. But yes, I think that it's really important, especially when people are coming in making comments. I mean, our quick fix to this is that all of the comments that are going to be posted are going to be citable and have DOIs.
Another comment on that is that, you know, one of the things that's extremely valuable about these journal articles are the references. And at the moment, those references are frozen in time. They only go backwards. It would be wonderful if there were an opportunity, perhaps for the new authors who are citing a work, to be able to go back to the original article and essentially put a mark on that article that says, you know, boy, you know, this guy thought he was right, but boy, you better read my paper too.
Forward-linking. Well, they can. I mean, non-automatically, you can do that, no problem. In that, all you need to do is put yourself up. You know, put a comment on and say, "See," and then link out.
Right. That's one thing, but it would be nice to have a sort of a stylized way of doing that. So there was essentially a set of other references which people had.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to see that in a list form. I wouldn't want to wade through a set of comments to find those.
I mean, of course, as long as they cite it properly, I can. There'll be a link. There'll be a button down the right-hand side that probably works through Google Scholar that says all the papers that that identifies all the papers that have cited this paper. That's. I mean, the functionality already exists. I think we even do it on our site. Papers that have cited this paper is an easy link to achieve through things like Google Scholar, PLoS, places like that. And so those will definitely be in place. Absolutely. Who hasn't said anything? Aaron.
Couple quick things. One is, what is the method of recording inappropriate comments and whatnot? Is there a straightforward way when you read a comment to say, this is spam? Or, and the other thing is...
Flag it and we'll look at it and we'll do it.
And so that's the standard way that you'll find it, is by other people reading it? Yes. Okay. And then
we don't want to be passing comments before they get published. What we want is papers to be published, and then we'll post-posting deal with them.
And then the other thing is...
You guys, I mean, you don't want to write a comment and wonder in a day's time whether it's actually going to appear on the site. If you write a comment, you want it to appear now. So we just do that.
The other thing is, it wasn't entirely clear whether people would be able to get away with using screen names as opposed to their profession. I mean, because I think one thing that you notice at conferences is that when people actually know they're going to be identified, they prepare the comments a little more carefully.
They will be identified.
There are blah 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 3.
Okay, we can't. I mean, there will be a screen name. One of the reasons for that is that people's names have this nasty tendency of going over, being any odd sort of lengths and stuff. And also people don't like to, sometimes they want to be known as something, they like to be called Chip rather than Charles and, stuff like that. So the display name there will be a display name, but that links straight through to a profile in which you can see a number of things about that person, like, geographical location and some, other things. And their proper names. Well, what they've told us is their proper name. If they lie, we ban them. Yeah.
So I work in the computational geosciences. I emailed you.
Yeah.
Before. So we usually work with very large data sets. Ultimately, because I work on computational stuff, I would like to both have a large data set and all the code which go from that data to the illustrations which are in my paper.
Yep.
Basically, to have a completely reproducible, paper where you go from, what was the document to what's there in an illustration. Do you have any sort of this is very difficult to do, really in terms of the space required. I mean, our data sets can be up to 100 gigabytes, so there's going to be some limitations to what we can mount.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a sizable limitation.
But couldn't it be published next to the paper, a link to go to that site?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the case, except then you have no control over what's there. So, I mean, in general, we would rather have the supplementary information, the big data set, with under our control. Also provide links as much as they like.
But the problem with the links are, if I put my data set on somewhere here and I move institutions,
it's not. It's ephemeral. A link is not good enough. So we need to find a solution to that. I can't do big data sets yet. I can give you. You can post a large amount of data as supplementary information. You can post, the data and the and the code right now to convert it if you want, but someone's going to have to be clever to use it. That's not a good enough solution, and I would like to be able to give you the solution where the figure itself was created from the data sets that you had in the background. That's a technical problem, but it's one on our list.
John Clairback's done some really nice work with this reproducible.
Yeah, he's got good stuff.
Click on figure.
Yeah, no, it's really nice, and I need to try and work a way of fitting that into our code, but it wasn't top priority, but it's there. I think there was a question up there.
Well, is there an effort to standardize that type of stuff? Or are you guys working on that, or somebody working on methods to do that?
It's not going to be us that standardizes it. So it's the community itself will need to standardize it, find some way. But we'll work with people to try and make that happen if we can. I mean, it's more likely to be something for Science Commons to worry about, and then we'll work with them. I can't do everything, guys. But I'd like that to be the way it goes.
I was just going to say that there's a project called Madagascar for computational geoscience, which aims to do exactly this, to have a fully reproducible document. But doesn't have a publication model, it's just a framework.
Yeah, but if we can start working with it, that'd be good.
So let me comment. I would love to see this happen. I think it will happen in some incarnation. But as the long-standing editor-in-chief of a small journal, not in biology or medicine, but in sort of mathematical computer science, I see my role as primarily keeping track of what my 40 members of the editorial board are doing. And that probably takes 5 hours a week of my time and 15 hours a week of my part-time assistants. And that's with 30 or 40 people. And you're talking about 1,000. And I don't see how you do it. Those 1,000 are what define this operation, if I understand. They're the people who you count on to certify soundness, if not outstanding quality. And the kind of people you want doing that are leading scientists and capable, busy people, and they let things slip, and you have to back them up.
And you have to chase them.
So how are you going to do that with one guy chasing 1,000 editors? I don't see it.
Well, no, as I say, I mean, I think it's in some ways it's not the size of the board as much as the flow of manuscripts, because you don't have to chase 1,000 editors if you've only got one paper. You only have to chase one paper. But that's not the point. But yes, I agree. That's why you need people. But I don't think. I mean, what I'm saying is you need people to oversee the activity of the board. Yes, you don't need people to. I don't want people to be triaging the science, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. We're going to need people. There's going to be a staff, and that's why we are going to fund. They will be fully looked after.
I carried away when you sort of said that you would be the only permanent full-time staffer to be 1,000.
Okay, right.
Seemed overboard.
I have 188 editors at this moment, and it takes me probably 5 hours a day to keep an eye on them. So yeah, no, I'm not underestimating that. There will be people, but it probably won't be people like necessarily me. It may be people who are worrying about the manuscript flow. But I think we're cut. Are we cut?
We're cut with tape and stuff.
Oh, okay. Oh, good, right. You can ask all the rude questions now then. That's good. There are T-shirts if anyone wants them. And more importantly, there are temporary tattoos, because my marketing department would hate me not to bring swag with me.